I'm Jared Smith. This is my home garage. Smith process happens here. Whatever that is. It's more often than not chaos. Right now it's really clean and I build stuff. It's 350 square feet in here, little aisleways to walk through basically. So coming through this side on the left of the motorcycle lift is my 2-inch belt sander. Try to keep it as far away from everything else as possible. Anytime I use it, I cover up everything else. And I use this pretty much every day for something. And some metal storage here, bin of hardware, and my press. Moving on. This is kind of a lot of floor space, but I just love it. It's an old wood lathe, all cast iron, super solid with a Sunstrand bench center on top of it. I use this for flywheel truing or anytime I need to check concentricity on a rod. I'll use this to test between centers. Behind that, pegboard. I've sort of second-guessed pegboards recently. I think they look nice, but I think they're actually a terrible way to store things. I want everything in drawers, so that might go away soon. There is stuff everywhere.
Did you have this in real life before? This little truck right here?
Yeah, it's called a Doka. It's a VW Doka. I built one, an 89. The one I had was a Synchro Doka, 4-wheel drive.
You sold it, right?
I did, yeah. My roof blew off, and when you have a stuff savings account, you sell your stuff. I just love all this little stuff. This little guy is like, he pops open, little storage container. There's nothing in him. I've had it since I was probably 5 years old.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, I used to keep just like coins and random bird feathers and, you know, rattlesnake tails and stuff like that in there that I would find. I grew up in Florida.
Born and raised in Florida, or?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Florida on family property. So I was homeschooled in the 80s when nobody else was homeschooled. So I wasn't, well, like we were pretty poor, and we just had this family land that my grandpa had, and we grew up there, and my brother and I were homeschooled, and I spent most of my time just messing around with like a little Honda Z50 and riding my horse in the woods.
Well, it sounds like a great childhood, man.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
What made you move to California?
We moved to California because my wife had always had a dream of living in San Francisco, and really, like, the career I had when we were in Florida wasn't going to support a family. And so, you know, at the end of the day, like, maybe the Oregon Trail story, like, hit me as a kid. And, like, anytime there's, like, a chance to completely shake up my life and do something totally different, I'm game. And so we just moved out here. Like, it was from the time we thought about it until doing it was, like, 2 weeks.
Wow.
We packed everything up and we moved. And we were just out here.
How long ago was that?
12 years. We bought this house 6 years ago or something like that. And the garage has gone through a ton of different configuration changes, like different mill, different lathe, completely different tools, different bikes, different layout. But I'm feeling pretty set on this layout now. It works for me. I can come out here barefoot at night and work on stuff after the kids go to bed. I can come out here early in the morning with my coffee. I just love it in here.
This is like your getaway pretty much, huh?
Yeah, it's the cave and the getaway, and you know, family talks happen here, and you know, kids come out when they're bored and we work on stuff together. And yeah, like my son and I right now are working on a he wanted to make a lightsaber, so we're just doing that.
That's awesome,
like
man.
on the side.
It, right?
Yeah, we can make anything. That's the hone used for honing things. Vise is here, and then kind of a little aisleway here with machinist tools, lathe tools up here, and more machinist tools, mechanic tools down here. Engine building stuff is in this drawer. This is a really nice Lista cabinet I got from an old jeweler in San Francisco. Kind of try to keep things, yeah, pretty organized. Taps and drills in there. TIG supplies, extra torch, some soldering supplies. So that's that. This is One of my favorite things I own is a Hardinge HLVH EM, English metric. And it's one of those things that's like mythical to own as a machinist. It's like, it is the top tier of like built the space shuttle NASA lathe that definitely, like when they made this, they never thought it was going to be in somebody's home garage in Vallejo, California. Like that is definitely not where this was intended to spend its life. But I found it. It was listed on, this was Craigslist then, like not even Facebook Marketplace. That didn't exist. It was Craigslist, and it had like a blurry photo of the electrical panel over here, like inside of this cabinet, not even the whole lathe. And it just said, the ad just said lathe 3-phase, and that was it. And so I went out on a limb and I like hit them up. It was down in San Jose. It was in a storage unit from Hewlett-Packard, and it had been used for prototyping plastic parts for a few years for printers, and that was it. And it had been sitting in storage since '92, and I brought it home. Anywhere you see on it, I put on it.
Crazy.
It was basically brand new. It's got storage built in, so all the chucks go down there. Dang. All the collets are in here.
How'd you get it home?
You know, with big machinery like this, I always hire a flatbed tow truck. I've just found that that's way easier than doing it myself. Yeah. You just call a tow truck company and they're going to be like, what kind of car is it? And you're just like, no, skip that part. It's not a car. And they just come and they like tilt it down and they have a winch on it. Oh. And you can just strap stuff like this and drag it up onto the bed. You know what you do on stuff like this when you want to move it is like, it's an old Egyptian moving trick, actually. I use this stuff all the time. Like I just moved my mill the other day and it's just black gas pipe from Home Depot. You put it up onto it. So you use pry bars and you get it up onto this and you just kind of roll it. Yeah. It's fantastic. It's a little hard to make corners, but it works out. More project storage up here. Manuals, sun-in inspection and gauge setting tools and stuff like that there. This is the tree mill. It's a knee mill like a Bridgeport, but with 12-inch wide box ways under this. So a lot more stout than a Bridgeport in the knee area. And so I climb cut on this for almost everything I do. And it doesn't have ball screws, it's standard lead screws, and just works great.
Is it about the same price as a Bridgeport, or?
Oftentimes they're a lot cheaper than Bridgeports because people don't really know what they are. Sometimes they can be pricier if they're in like exceptionally good condition with a lot of options. The tricky part about them is finding collets. And I would say this is actually a pro of Bridgeports over the Tree system. Is Tree uses these type of Z collets and they go in like that. And if all your operations in one day happen to be exactly that same collet size, it's so much faster than a Bridgeport R8. If you're changing, it's a bit slower, but that's all you do. So you kind of tighten this and then pull up until it snaps, and that's a collet closer. So now the spindle's free to move and that's locked in. You go back up, pull that out, and it just drops out again. So that's a really nice system. I tend to buy tooling all in the same size, like stepped end mills and things like that, just so that I can do operations all with one collet size.
How did you get into machining?
I got into machining mostly because of motorcycles, I think. Like growing up, I had motorcycles, but they weren't, I mean, I was working on them, but it was like fixing the carburetor and putting a new chain on. It wasn't like building them from scratch. And then, you know, I started reading Blogspot blogs back before Instagram, and I got really into, you know, the Zen of Nito blog and Freak Out the Squares and stuff like that. And I got the chopper bug, and I really like just the idea of, holy shit, you can make the entire thing yourself. Like, it fit everything about how my brain works. Like as a kid, I didn't want to play with Legos. I wanted to design my own system of Legos. And so now I feel like just choppers and custom motorcycles and all of this scratches that itch for me. Whatever I think of, I can just make it. And I oftentimes do that to my own detriment. Like, I don't know how a stock Harley, 61 axle fits, or in like what the spacers are. So fuck it, I'll just make all of it. I'll just make it all up. I was really inspired by custom choppers, and then I just bought a lathe. This was 2014, 2015. I just bought a lathe, a Delta Rockwell Homecraft, like totally not a nice lathe, but it was $300 and it was on Craigslist and I could afford that. And so I jumped on it, and I had a couple friends go help me pick it up. And then I got it home and I turned some weird cam-shaped stuff because I kept taking parts in and out of a 3-jaw and not centering it. And, a lot of trial and error and figuring it out. And then, a couple months later, I bought a TIG welder and blew a bunch of holes in sheet metal trying to figure out how to use that thing. And it's all just been like
Trial and error.
It's been trial and error, but not to discount like the people that I've met along the way. That's what this chopper scene is really been nice for. Is there obviously are egos, but there are so many, I think, more people. Maybe I've just been lucky in finding the people, but for every person with an ego that doesn't want to show you anything, there's somebody else who is just happy to share what they know. And they can genuinely tell that you're genuinely curious, and they're happy to like pass it on. Yeah. And I found a ton of people like that who have like, I didn't go to school for this stuff. I just want to know how to do it. And I'm really curious, and I'll spend the money and I'll spend the time and I'll like whatever it takes, I'll figure it out. And I want to do it. And people will often like meet you there and show you how to TIG weld or how to do this joint or how to prepare it or how to machine something, and if they don't, just try it anyway. That's what I've done. And like, yeah, shit breaks, so what? Just go fix it and try again and you learn something. This is the latest addition to the shop here. This whole bench, storage underneath, and then this is my phase converter. So this provides 3-phase power from the house single phase to all the 3-phase machines. So my hone and mill and lathe all are 3-phase. So that's really nice. I mean, typically on an average day, I just kind of start this thing up in the morning and it runs for the rest of the day. And it just keeps going. It provides 5 horsepower of 3-phase and works great. So that's that. And then this bench my intention is kind of an all-purpose standing bench just to work at, but with a focus on top end work and doing heads and doing cylinders and valves and guides and all of the parts of a top end. So that's kind of how the bench is focused right now. And it's also what happens to be on the bench, working on the top end for my 1960 XLCH. So that's that. Really happy with it. Super handy. It's the first time I've ever had all the Milwaukee batteries just where I could get to them. Before they were just kind of like strewn around and, loose on the ground. And now they're just like really tight here and I can just, grab one when I need it. These are new acquisitions for me. Recently got these. I love a good story about how I got something. Almost everything that I have, like the lathe and the story I had about that coming from Hewlett-Packard. These came from Jim Belland, who was a mechanic at Dudley Perkins Harley in San Francisco, and he's now 80 or 81 years old. I got introduced to him through another friend and got to go up to his shop and check it out, and was able to purchase these from him because he's too, he's at that point in life where he's not really working in his shop anymore. But I will keep these forever, and I will, it just makes me smile to use something like this, learning how to use it for the first time myself and hopefully using it for years and getting better at using them, knowing that like race motors that won races were made with this.
A lot of history, right?
Yeah.
Did it come in this condition as well?
I cleaned them up. I haven't restored them, but anytime I bring something into the shop, I tend to WD-40 and go to town with a little scrubbing. I don't repaint stuff. To me, like that kind of loses the value and the history. And I love all these wear marks. Like that's you know, that's where this has been opened and closed
used,
for
right?
years.
Yeah.
That's the significance of it to me. I don't want that to go away. I want it to function really well, but I want to respect the fact that it has a story and it has its own life. And I think cleaning it up but leaving it roughly in that condition that it came in is the way to do that. So coming around this way, I mean, this is not not as attractive as the front part, but this is all like my construction and house renovation and woodworking tools. Just kind of piled up, but still like organization bins for screws and nails and blades and bits and the belt sander and the Dremel that comes out like once a year and that sort of tools, and then like, you know, hand tools and yard tools and all that kind of stuff, plumbing bits and whatever. And then in here, I mean, this is our house, and it has to serve multi-purpose. So you got laundry, washer, dryer, kids skate storage, weed eater. You know, it's a regular family garage back here, but with a knucklehead blueprint up top. And then this is the welding area that also kind of serves as my catch-all bench, and I work from here whenever I'm doing computer work or just sitting down to write and think or whatever it is. So it's kind of a desk and a welding area. And I love this table. It's a Rhino cart. And in my opinion, it's the best bang for your buck. Comes with all the clamps and hold downs, and it's reversible. So if you damage the top of this, you can just take it off and flip it over. It's 5/8 thick, solid steel, nitrided. So if you MIG weld, splatter won't get stuck to it. So that's that. It's a 1960 panhead I'm working on for myself. Lower ends together, top ends coming next. A lot of art from my kids. I love this one.
Those flames.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's like a pretty good Sportster motor. Like, got the general shape. I don't know why my arms are so long, but it's so pretty cool. I love the early XLCHs. People call them girls' bikes, Sportsters all the time, and maybe I just like an underdog and gravitated to that. But from the get-go, like even back when I was just kind of reading and looking at all the Zen of Nito and Freak Out the Squares and like all these blog spots like Jeff Wright's blog spot and Max's and all these guys, like, I don't know, I didn't really want a big twin. It took me a long time to even remotely be interested in a panhead or a shovel head. Like, I just really wanted a Sportster the whole time. I don't know what it is, but they're fun. They do burnouts, they wheelie, they're light, and they just feel right to me. This is the TIG Welder. A lot of people told me not to buy anything but a Miller or anything but a Lincoln. And they were wrong, because I bought this and I've never had a single issue with it. It's an Everlast, and it is everlasting. I just have not been able to break it. It works. I don't know if that's everybody's experience. Like, I'm not endorsed by them or anything. I'm not endorsed by anybody. I just do all this stuff. But this is fantastic. It just works. Every time I need it to, it turns on and does what it should.
I like the lights that you put on too. Those are nice. Where'd you get the lights from?
You know, they're just like a Lowe's thing, or like local hardware store kind of deal. I just prefer them over like the like the rectangular long shop lights that you usually see. This feels better to me, and a lot about this space is how it feels and how I feel in it. And you know, that's a symbiosis of like everything else that's going on in my life or with my kids or with my wife, but it's also like everything looks like this so that I feel inspired when I come in here and that I feel like creating something. Every little corner is a reflection of me, something I love, and I don't know, like just things that make me smile or remind me of a story and make me want to work. This is the bike I've owned the longest. It's gone through a ton of different configurations since I've had it. When I bought it, it was in like a methed out MIG welded chopper frame that was awful. It's a 1960 XLCH. I'm redoing the top end on it right now. which is why it's off. We're going 100 over on the pistons and standard size on valves, but just new. And yeah, I bought this on my 30th birthday, which is almost 10 years ago now. I'll be 40 in 2 weeks, and trying to get it back on the road for that. I think I can do it in 2 weeks.
I think you can do it too.
So in its current configuration, all of this is just old chrome stuff I found at swap meets, basically, aside from the handlebars, which I made, and they're pretty simple, just drag bars, but I like left them unblended on the weld at the top, which is not something I would usually do. I'd usually blend that out, but I liked the idea on this bike of just kind of leaving that one piece I made for it, how it came out of the welder. The rest is just old swap meet parts. Been collecting old chrome for a long time.
Is this the bike that you'll keep forever?
Yeah, I'll have this one forever. My kids will get this when I'm gone. It may look different. I in the 10 years I've owned it, I think I've built it into probably 6 different bikes.
Wow.
In that time. Always the same motor, but completely different configurations. Sometimes looking like a stock sporty, sometimes looking like a chopper. I like to play with it and change it up, but in this configuration, it's the Dreamsicle. That's what it's called.
That's a nice name for it.
I think I'm gonna leave it like this for a while. It's got the look, you know, it's got the little stuff that makes me happy, like even this cable kind of being, throttle cable cover being a little sun damaged. That's how I found it at the swap meet, and I was like, oh shit,
that's perfect.
That orange in there, like that's perfect for the bike. Little touches like that.
That one's cool too.
Yeah, that's the Dreamsicle.
What's the story behind this one?
Mike and Grant invited me to build a bike for that. I was originally going to enter for the Biltwell People's Champ, and Grant saw my entry and hit me up and said, hey, we're looking for one more person. Why don't you just come on? And so that was pretty cool of them, and they took a chance. I mean, I had never built a Big Twin before. I had only built Sportsters. I had, worked on some stuff, but never a whole show bike. And so constant thanks to those guys for taking a chance. And I built a bike and I got that. And
Is that bike over there, right?
yeah, and I got that bike out of it.
Is there a name for this bike?
This is Grace.
Grace?
Yeah.
How'd you come up with that name?
It's a little bit just kind of what was on my mind at the time, because I was spending 15, 16-hour days in the garage, and I felt like my wife was giving me a lot of grace. It's also just a word and a name. My great aunt was named Grace, and she was super special to me. And her son is really one of the first people I met. His name was Byron, and he actually passed away on the way back from Sturgis when I was like 20 years old. And he was a chopper builder. He built like big rear wheel, kind of big dog style chop in the early 2000s. And he was in Florida where I grew up. And, I'd go over to his house, and he was like, his coffee table was tires and like with glass on top of it. And in his kitchen was a motorcycle lift and like a valve grinder next to the sink. And he was just like the coolest guy. He had like Sharpie quotes all over his wall. And, yeah, his mom's name was Grace, my great aunt. So it's a little bit that, a little bit just feeling like be able to be invited to build the bike when like I'm self-taught, and these people, like so many people have helped me learn all of this stuff, and it just felt like the right name. But also, I have 3 kids and I have the time to build something like this. Like that's a lot of grace. That's a lot of other people giving to me. And so that's what I wanted to name the bike. It's not a tough guy name, and that's good with me. 3 different Yamaha front ends spliced together, extended, and then custom black DLC fork tubes. The handlebars are integrated into the top of the fork tubes, and that actually holds the top triple tree on and the handlebars down while pulling up on the fork tubes. If you want to know more about that, there's like a story highlight on my Instagram that kind of walks through how all that works and how I built it all. But if you look back here, these are actually preload adjusters that are captive nuts. So these, as you dial them in and out, adjust the preload on the springs inside of the forks, but they're integrated into the handlebars, which to me was just kind of like, it was neat. I'd never seen anybody do it. I wanted to see if I could pull it off, but it was also sort of like, the rest of this bike is very performance and modern, and it's got a lot of billet parts on it, but it's a 1960 Harley motor, and doing something like this felt very like honoring to Choppers and Born Free and the show, and just like what we're all doing here with Choppers is like do something like that. So that was my way of like integrating something. The wheels are from Lindall. Most people think they just make brakes, but they make really cool wheels too. So these are their 11 spoke mag wheels. The triple trees are Mullins chain drive. Everybody knows that. Everybody runs them. They're really fun. You have to be a full-blown machinist to pull it off. You are not gonna fit anything off the shelf together with Mullins trees and get dual disc. Brakes and all my controls front to back on the bike are from ISR in Sweden. It is this guy Aki, and he is an old Swedish man, and he's lovely, and he makes all of this stuff in his home garage. Wow. Just like I make my stuff in my home garage.
How'd you find him?
ISR has been around since I might be wrong on this, but I think it's the late 80s, and they were pretty well known. They are still a very small company, but yeah, they were like supplying GP brakes in the late 80s and early 90s. Keanu Reeves Motorcycle Company runs them on all the Arch motorcycles. I called him up when I started the project, and I was like, look, here's what I'm doing. And he didn't care at all. He was just like, all right, completely unfazed. But he was like, send me the dimensions, we'll make it happen. And so he made the rotors to my spec, and the calipers are completely custom for the mounting holes and the offset of them left to right to match what I needed them to match to fit them in.
Wow.
And the controls are really cool. Anybody can go buy these from ISR, and if you want some really cool controls, you should. These are adjustable in their fulcrum point where they push on the lever. So no tools, side of the road, you can get more brake feel just by dialing that up or down. So you bleed it at the lowest point, and then you have adjustment from minus to positive, and then they're adjustable here for your lever reach.
Wow.
So all with no tools, you can just do all of that, and they work.
I was gonna say, like, I like that you had two cables. Well, you had to.
On the carbs?
Yeah, dual cables were here.
Oh yeah, you basically, yeah, you have to. That's the way to do it. These throttles are great for that. The Tomaselli dual pull throttles. You only have a couple options for throttles with two cables that both pull versus one pulling, one returning. Yeah. I guess moving back, the frame is made by me here in the shop. It's a 4130 chromoly, incredibly light, and a little different than a typical Harley frame. I went back and forth. People questioned me on it for the rear triangle section. I wanted to do something a little different in the rear, and based on what I wanted to do with the fender, I did kind of a kick up and in on the top of the rear triangle, and I love how it turned out. To me, it just, especially when you look at the bike from the rear, it just makes it feel like I wanted it to. Very, very, not very wide, but a little wider in the rear, leading up to narrower in the front, kind of feeling like an arrow, and that was the goal. So I think the frame tends to accentuate that with the way that I kind of kick those in there. So really happy with that. The whole rear fender and seat pan made here. Pretty simple sheet metal bead rolled piece. The transmission is a Baker 6-4. The foot pegs and foot controls are made by me, and the hanger for them here. A little more about the motor is it's a 1960 panhead lower end. So from basically here down is a pan head, and from here up is a shovel head. But instead of a front and a rear, it is two fronts. So we've got a front cylinder and a front head, and a front cylinder and a front head. Meaning the intake is here on the rear, whereas it usually would be inside here. So to pull that off, you have to have a custom cam ground that reverses the roll of the two push rods inside, and then you have to do an absolutely insane amount of welding and machining on the head to basically remake the intake ports and the rear exhaust port. The only thing you don't have to do the heads is change the front exhaust port. That's it. Absolutely everything else about them has to get moved.
Crazy. And you did that in here in the garage?
I did, yeah.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah, it was a lot of welding. Halfway through welding one of them, I'd been welding like all day, and just building up material. So the head is probably, I don't know, 300 maybe more degrees, and I just was not thinking, and I had a piece of styrofoam sitting beside my welding table, and I just was frazzled. Totally fried, grabbed the head with my leather gloves on and just sat it down on the styrofoam, and it instantly melted through it and was covered in styrofoam that I had to pick off.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, so little fun on the project. The rocker boxes here, which people commonly just call heads, but these are the rocker boxes. These are my design. They're called Roland rocker boxes. My grandpa's name was Roland. He was a World War II vet, super rad guy. They are machined by Christian Newman. We still make them, but it's a different design now. This design, I was in a rush. I was trying to get done for Born Free, and like I said earlier about just I'll make it myself, and that kind of being the way I avoid getting slowed down on a project when I don't know how factory would have done it. I couldn't take the time at the time of Born Free to figure out how to run stock shovel head rocker shafts. So what I did was just have Christian machine a straight bore, and then I made custom A2 tool steel rocker shafts to go in, and it's using S&S roller rockers inside. The later versions of them, I actually took the time to redesign them, and now the later version of the boxes uses stock shovel head rocker shafts.
That's cool. What made you come up with this color?
I'm an early VW guy, though I don't have one right now. I really love them. This is a very classic VW color called Dove Blue. So it's kind of a slate color. It was everything I could do to get Mikey to paint just a solid color with no pinstriping and glitter. And then everybody loved it. Mikey crushed it. It's amazing.
This is your logo, right?
Yeah, that's my logo. It's a falcon. It's a bit of a, I think they're very cool because they are the fastest thing on the planet.
Really?
Yeah, it's a peregrine falcon diving. They dive at upwards of 240 miles an hour.
Holy, that's crazy fast.
That is just like them free diving. They will soar so high, and then they put their body into like the most perfect aerodynamic shape ever. And from like miles in the sky, they can see a field mouse on the ground, and they will dive at it and they kill it on impact just from the speed they're flying at. The other part of it is my wife is an avid birder, and so I had to make the logo a little bit of love for her.
That's perfect.
I guess the last detail on here, I mean, we could go forever, but the last thing to really call out is this primary that is super dirty. This is not a show bike anymore. Like the exhaust has stuff all over it. Like I've re-welded the oil tank like 2 times. That's fine with me. It was a show bike. Now it's a go bike, and I just ride it and I clean it occasionally, but like it's dirty. Anyway, the primary is an XR750 primary from Infield Racing. And to make that, well, and the inside of it is a Harley K model engine half. And to make all that work, this guy, you can check my Instagram. I think there's a post or something, I don't know, something on there about how I did it, but it's cut, I cut it apart into like 5 pieces. We'll just say that. Yeah, I cut it into 5 pieces, welded it back together. and extended it from the shorter Sportster unit to the longer Big Twin.
Crazy. Can you start it?
Yeah. So every bike kind of has their sequence that they like. This one's pretty particular with the sequence. So give it a squirt or two of the accelerator pump.
Man, that thing's loud.
Loud is half the fun, I think.
I'm sure it's fast too. It sounds fast.
It's pretty fast. It's not, you know, I'm a Sportster guy, and then that's my 1200S behind it. So like comparing it to that is like, I don't know. But it's fun. It feels different. Like it's definitely not as fast as that. But then the way it sounds and the way it feels, and you're just kind of like sitting on barely a seat.
Yeah.
You know, with your handlebars like right there and nice and tight, and like so much brakes, and like it's very nimble with how light the frame is, and you can just like whip it everywhere. And even though it's not as fast, it feels faster. So this is the tank off of my Biltwell 100 race bike from earlier this year. I went down there and raced and built this bike specifically for it. It's you can see we signed it here. This art is by my 11-year-old son, Kieran. He's pretty obsessed with dinosaurs and obviously a really amazing artist. So he did that on both sides. It's a tip of the hat at the Carol Ressweber bike that's at Dale's Wheels Through Time in Maggie Valley. And if you don't know that bike, you should look it up. It's got a mallard on the side of it that is very similar color palette and sizing to this. And I just showed that to my son, Kieran, and I was like, do whatever you want. And so he also loves a pun, and he was like, oh, that's the Carol Ressweber bike. Let's make the Rex Weber, and we'll do this.
Awesome.
So I'm super proud of him. I came in nearly dead last, but I had a good time. This was my cousin Byron's, one of the things I have from him after he passed, but you know, a generator shovel or something kind of close to it. They didn't quite nail the shape. It's got a skull headlight, and it's all raked out with a long springer, big king queen seat on there, and some amorphous blob of a tank. But yeah, you flip it over and it's a lighter. It doesn't have fluid in it, but yeah, it's got a Japan hallmark on the bottom. Cool little thing.
Yeah, that's super rare.
Yeah, so I've had that since he passed, and I keep it up here with my special stuff.
It's kind of cool right there, so he can kind of look over you, right?
Yeah.
Watch you build and stuff.
A little bit.
That's cool. Thank you so much for your time.
Dude, you're welcome. Thanks.
That is his name. His name is son. It'd be weird if his name was daughter.
All right, family photo.